and they are only going to get crazier from here. As let's dive in to the first story, and that, of course, is what's happening right now in the Middle East, as there is a full-on ground invasion that's going on right now in the south of Lebanon, as the British broadcasting company is saying, how did this happen? How did we get here? Well, we got a little insight into that, as of course Politico also has a very interesting article detailing how U.S. officials quietly backed Israel's military push against Hezbollah. Yes, you heard that correctly. U.S. government officials urged caution and stressed the need for diplomacy, but at the same time said that they agreed with the larger military actions that the Israeli government and military were conducting, that of course were escalating the situations that crescendoed to the moment of the Iranians using this very moment at the start of this invasion to launch nearly 200 rocket attacks into Israel. As the initial reports that we're getting is that already 8 Israeli soldiers have lost their lives with clashes with Hezbollah inside of south of Lebanon. And it definitely does look like this conflict is a full-on war. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what we were saying was going to happen here. We were telling you days beforehand, especially for members-only videos on lookandfilter.com, saying, hey, get ready, because this war is going to get started. It has started. It's real. It's in our face. And I only see it getting worse from here. What about you guys?
I think that's the understatement of the century. I think that ramping these things up now, especially when there's such a popular news cycle, is good for them as well, because whenever you want to make a distraction from whatever bad thing that the administration here does, you can always just point there. Same with the mainstream media.
Yeah. Interesting timing, especially, 33 days right before November 5th, as everyone's attention is everywhere else. This is the time to kind of take advantage of the situation, as people in the White House are taking naps and not really being listened to by the Israeli government. Joe Biden has made many public statements saying, hey, we demand you do this. Israel's like, okay, and then they do the exact opposite of it. Mm-hmm. It's like that cat that just keeps hitting stuff off of the table and you keep telling it to stop. That's American foreign policy and diplomacy here, but now we're getting some mixed messages from Politico with a very interesting statement here highlighting how publicly the Biden administration is like, stop it. And in private, they're like, okay, just go ahead, go invade, which is... very, very peculiar, to say the least. Not really, but we're getting at least a little bit more insight than we previously did before about this situation, which is a very serious situation. I think a lot of people forget. They're like, oh, yeah, it's going to be like just 2006. It's not going to be just like 2006. There are other countries involved here. There are proxy groups involved here. And the escalatory factors here are pretty big, especially with countries like China and Russia also looking closely at this situation, as they are very closely aligned with Iran. And there's even considerations about the Russians potentially giving nukes to the Iranians, which is a real discussion that's also happening as well, that would further escalate this situation and endanger the whole world.
It's almost like a free time the next like 33 days. It's like if there was ever a time where the U.S. was distracted, especially the leadership, now would be the time. So it's like strategically, if you were in war, that's what any of us would do as well. So it's no surprise that that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of suspicious things are just being, released right now, right? You've got the Diddy stuff, you've got the longshoreman strike, you've got what happened in Israel, you've got the quartz mine, you've got the what's the other one? The lithium mines. I mean, I don't know. I'm just been inundated with a bunch of bad news.
Yeah, it seems pretty obvious to me that the wars in the Middle East are not popular amongst the Democratic voting base, but they are very popular amongst the Democratic donors class. So what you see is the split is that Joe Biden has to pretend as if he's giving lip service to peace, while behind the scenes, Antony Blinken is quietly green-lighting everything Israel does.
Yeah, but this is the question. Is Joe Biden just not being listened to? Is he a puppet that is just irrelevant at this point?
I
that
assume
doesn't
this is
even
a
matter?
rhetorical question.
It is.
Okay.
Is he just Sleepy Joe who's not really competent, who's not really there, who's not really conscious? Is he just such of old age that he cannot muster any kind of decisive, good, cohesive decisions? As this article is pretty interesting, I want to read the first paragraph here from Politico, as it reads, senior White House figures privately told Israel that the United States would support its decision to ramp up military presence against Hezbollah, even as the Biden administration publicly urged the Israeli government in recent weeks to curtail its strikes, according to American and Israeli officials. So multiple sources, of course, anonymous sources, take that as you may here. But this also does highlight the larger kind of PR problem for the Democrats, as this issue is very inconvenient for them. And it's also creating a larger divide amongst its base. Now, already, this issue is very tumultuous when you're on social media. A lot of people love their gangs. A lot of people love their countries. A lot of people love one particular side of the conflict here, and they only like to highlight specific issues regarding their side of the story that they want regurgitated. Here, we take a different approach, as of course we are fully anti-war. A lot of people are saying, pray for Iran. Other people are saying, just pray for Israel. I'm saying, pray for both. Because we're at such a crazy situation where we should prioritize and respect human life on all sides here, that soon we'll have to pay the ultimate price for poor government decisions and sociopathic individuals within government that are using this larger situation in order to, of course, enrich themselves through, of course, the spoils of war.
And they continue to deploy, tens of thousands of troops have been deployed over the past few months to this region. And obviously the claim is that it's for aid or it's for humanitarian assistance or whatever, bullshit line that they want to sell us on. But the reality is that the American military is the pit bull of the world, and it works at the behest of Israel in the Middle East. And it seems quite evident to me that that's the real reason that we're there. We're not there to help the Lebanese get out or help the American hostages get released from Hamas. We are there to serve as a warning to Iran that if you guys get crazy, the big dog on the planet is going to have our back. So I think that's what it is, and I think that Biden's lip service is just that.
Absolutely. The big question now is what will happen next? What will be the retaliation that the Israelis do against the Iranians? As, of course, we have the Daily Mail article that is doing a live update report on all of this, as they detail now how Mossad headquarters was actually targeted in this missile barrage, and that the United States is, quote, calling this an outrageous escalation in the Middle East, as they're also kind of saying, yeah, you could escalate. One of the sides could escalate. The other country, no. And I think we need a kind of wholesome, cohesive kind of understanding of everything that is happening here in an honest perspective, which I think we're definitely not getting from, of course, the corporate media.
There was months-long bombing campaigns in Gaza on largely civilian territory. This is now the escalation?
Well, there was also the bombing of the embassy inside of Syria as well,
Sure.
Which drastically escalated the situation as well. But also at the same time, let's be fair here. Hezbollah has started bombing Israel ever since October 8th of last year.
Yeah.
So that is another existential threat that the Israelis are also dealing with, as well as the Iranian support of the Houthis, who are launching missiles and trying to block the important trade routes in the region as well.
These are all escalations. The only point I'm making is that it's only described as an escalation by the U.S. when it's an aggression towards the Israeli side. I think a more even-handed approach to this would say, oh yeah, there's crazy escalations on both sides. Same thing happens with the Ukraine-Russia war. They constantly downplay anything that Ukraine's doing, which they have done a lot of crazy stuff, including drone strikes and bombing campaigns inside of Russia. But then when Russia responds, that's the escalation. There is no escalation from the Ukrainian side. It's like there's escalations on all sides. It's a war. That's how wars work. But if you're going to be, only showing concern for one side, it becomes obvious what your actual motives are.
Yeah, the warmongers have taken over the corporate media. And they did it in a process where it's been happening for quite a while. I remember Donahue was one of the biggest targets back in the day. I think 20 plus years ago, they went after him because he opposed the specific wars that the United States was starting. Then it was Jesse Ventura. He was on MSNBC, and they literally gave him golden handcuffs because he didn't agree with the Iraq war. This is still when MSNBC was seen as this kind of leftist, liberal, free speech, anti-war kind of media establishment, as of course it fully changed its larger perspectives here, and now they are fully for war. because they always kind of have been. There's been a lot of underhanded efforts to try to compromise and destroy voices that talk about peace. But if we're going to be honest here, we got to talk about escalations on both sides. We got to talk about the risk to both sides, the loss of life on both sides. And I think once we do it from that kind of perspective, we give the American people an understanding of this that they would never get through the corporate media that is literally beating the drums of war. Not literally, but figuratively beating the drums of war, saying we got to give the military-industrial complex everything they want, or else you're an unpatriotic Putin puppet, Iranian, Islamic-loving junta.
What makes you wonder if it's like, what is the United States' official position? Because it's like, if we don't have anybody that's leading the ship that gives us a cohesive position on any of these conflicts, it's kind of like if you had a restaurant that didn't have a manager. It's like some people can take some power in certain parts of the restaurant and it becomes this frazzled mess. And then we start reacting to each individual thing that happens instead of having a singular person that's directing it. It's like, we all know that Biden's not directing it. We know that Kamala can't do anything. Trump doesn't have the power yet. So you have Anthony Blinken making a decision. You have the defense secretary making decisions, and then the military-industrial complex and all those people can make their contributions, and then we just have to react to all the bad things that happen.
No, absolutely.
Well, so something that's like a slight side point. So I have a friend of mine, she's in the military, and she's no longer in it, but I guess once you're there, you're able to be called back in. And she was saying that she's going to go to the Middle East. And I was like, how about you stay home? And not even just to watch her kid, which I think would be better use of her time than to go and blow up people. But
so is she's being called by the military to go to the Middle East?
She has not been yet, but that is the intent, and that's what she's saying she's going to do. And I was saying to her, well, why don't you stay here? Because it seems like if all of our troops are over there, who's going to be here? Our ports are all messed up. We've been having, floods of illegal aliens of varying kinds. And, if our military goes all the way over there, what the hell are they doing over there?
The Tennessee National Guard was sent over to the Middle East as they're kind of needed right now after the natural disaster that hit the south of the United States. But again, America has its priorities. Let's be sure. The globalists, the establishment people who purport themselves to be Americans, who don't have any allegiance to it, are using America in order to, of course, satiate their bloodlust and need for human sacrifice. Put it simply, that's exactly what's happening here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but don't you guys feel like scared of the situation? I mean, it's getting very, very bad out there. What happened with Tennessee and with North Carolina, nobody's going to help them. They don't even care that everybody's noticing it. Look at what happened with Maui. Now we have all of this extra stuff. And if our, precious military is going to be somewhere else, I mean, I feel like we're just sitting ducks over here, and it's never been a more precarious situation. Additionally, because you have to consider that the ruling class does not necessarily want things to be smooth. They don't have the same incentives as we do, right? To stay alive. I think that they'd be happy if we all, went away and they could have their robot servants.
Then add to that the news from just a few days ago, I think maybe last week, where there's tens of thousands of known violent offenders that are, quote unquote, gotaways. You look at that, you look at the National Guard being deployed, you look at the multiple proxy wars simultaneously, you look at the inflationary pressure and the civil divide, and I don't know how you conclude anything other than like we're being set up to be conquered, and our government is participating in that process. And I still struggle to understand what the ultimate motives are, but it seems quite clear that's what's occurring.
It's the season finale of America. That's what's happening here.
Yes.
And that's what we're seeing. And it's going to crescendo in about 33 days from now.
It seems like it's like the thing about the United States, and we pretend like we're saving Americans by getting involved in all these wars overseas, yet there are actual Americans dying here. And the thing that I keep thinking about is like there's no money to be made saving people in Appalachia and saving people in Georgia. There's no money. There's no bombs. There's no visual. Like, look at all the news outlets. They want to show you rockets going off. There's money to be made there. The rockets that are being sent, those are money that's being spent. There's no money to save people in Appalachia. So that's why they just don't care about it. And the only way that they would care would be if there was enough of an uproar that it jeopardized Kamala Harris's ability to get elected.
And I think only because of the uproar that we saw, That's why she kind of staged that photo with her headphones not even being connected to the phone as she was writing on what looks like a blank piece of paper with her tweet about how she's responding to the natural emergency happening in the south of the United States. So we got that, and I think we only got that mainly because of the outrage on social media.
Yeah, and a few hours ago, Joe Biden announced that he'd be sending, I think it was 1,000 troops. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, you've sent tens of thousands to the Middle East. We have 5 states that are dealing with severe flood damage and hundreds of missing people. It's like, that gets 1,000? Crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting also because there's been some kind of rustlings that they actually want to take advantage of the quartz and the lithium deposits there. The people locally did not want to sell those mines, I guess, to other people. So it's a little bit akin to the Hawaii situation where nobody wanted to sell their land, and now all of a sudden they can pick it up pennies on the dollar, and there's just no incentive. I mean, even the fact that I don't understand why the hurricane was so devastating there. Does anybody know why it was so bad?
I don't know why, but here's another thing that's interesting is like the fire in Maui was a surprise, right? It was an accident or whatever. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But a hurricane is known about days in advance. It's like you're telling me that the most advanced technology systems and the most advanced government in the history of the world couldn't tell the trajectory of this thing. Like one thing that's so great about Ron DeSantis in Florida is like when they know that a hurricane's coming, he was posting images days in advance of all of the electricity trucks lining up, all the linemen lining up, and they were already positioning people and to anticipate a bad thing happening. So it's like if we're reacting to this days later because it's a once in 100-year thing, it's like they saw it coming. It's not like it just was a wildfire that just burst out. So that's something to be to think about as well.
No, absolutely. That's a great point that I think was made here because they understand the calamity of a lot of these kind of events and the trajectory of them and how bad they could be and the results of them. And they could have, sent a lot of resources. They could have had a lot of help. They could have saved a lot of American lives, but it definitely does seem like the American is seen as kind of a joke, someone who's not prioritized, someone that they don't give a damn about, someone who is just there. And if you ever thought the government cared about you, I think 2024 highlighted how they don't give a damn about you.
Yeah.
And the opposite of that, they hate you. They don't like you at all. They want you to go away. They want you not to reproduce. They don't want you to have babies. They want people to come in from the third world in order to replace you. And then, of course, allow them to have, record profits, cheap labor, and the cost of housing to go dramatically up because they don't give a damn about you. They never did. Even in an election year, even in a year where they're supposed to be making their pitches, they're supposed to be making their promises, they talk a good game, but the consequences of their actions are so vast that they could no longer be denied to the human eyes and the human ears. We all see and understand what's going on here. We're all getting the short end of the stick. We're all getting screwed over, and we're all kind of left asking the question, what's next? Because it can only go worse from here, especially after the election, especially after the possibility of another kind of Kamala World Economic Forum, Build Back Better Bidenomics administration that will be implementing the same policies, screwing you over even more.
Well, and a lot of people talk about how they're trying to racialize this and say, oh, they're not providing aid because these are largely, white people areas. And certainly there's a lot of angry people on TikTok that are dancing on their graves. But if you actually look at what happened in Katrina, largely black area, very similar behavior. They just don't care.
Question: has anyone heard anything about any rumblings about like geoengineering, weather modification?
You
clouds
took the
hitting
words
hard?
out of my mouth. I was trying to figure this out because we've had so many instances where it seems like there have been directed energy weapons used. They have patents for these hurricane makers and movers. But how would we even know? Because I think that that's really something to consider at this point, that is what they're using. But how would we ever know that that's even a thing? Like, is there going to be a point where people can even figure that out? I don't know how you would even be able to. I've seen those, radar things, and they'll show unusual patterns that seem man-made, even radiation patterns that seem sort of out of nowhere. But I don't see there being some kind of a consequence or deeper diving into that. I try and tell my mother about it, and she just goes, I don't care about this, leave me alone, even though she watches Tucker Carlson all day. So maybe we got to get Tucker to talk about it. I don't know, but I would like to know what's going on because that's been speculated about for a long time, and it seems very hard to find a resolution for that or even be sure that that's what's going on.
It is real too, and it's funny because I think a lot of people kind of put geoengineering in the same category as like flat eartherism, where it's like I think it was in Dubai a couple months ago, they cloud seeded there to try to get some rain, and it like flooded out all of these hotels and whatnot in Dubai. It's like this is a obvious, blatant example. They've done this at the Olympics, so this is a very real thing. It's like if you would destroy your population as obviously and clearly as they are already doing, is it really that far out of the scope to think that they wouldn't maybe angle and or contribute to the strength of one of these things to use it for all of their existing narratives? They certainly have no problem destroying us in every other category.
Yeah, weather modification weapons are real,
Yeah.
and they're not just conspiracy theories. Foreign governments use them all the time for their kind of larger purposes and needs. And to think that this hasn't been weaponized in a way, especially by the Pentagon, you're fooling yourself. The Russians have tsunami weapons that they could utilize. As I think we are, speculating here a little bit, just to be kind of frank and honest with everyone here and just transparent here. But the possibilities that they have are very vast, and with the amount of hatred that they have for you as an individual, as an American, it makes sense. They're like, screw it, let's test this out. Send in the weather weapons, and let's just cause more chaos. Let's just destroy more people, because why not? We're already doing it with war. We're already doing it with bioweapons in Wuhan. In Ukraine as well. We're doing it already in so many different ways. Why not?
Well, especially if there's something to gain, like what Tatiana is saying is that those people didn't want to sell their land. It's like very similar to the Hawaii situation where all the blue roofs were, whatever the conspiracy of the blue roofs were, which I'm curious to know a little more about that. Do we get an investigation about it? No, we don't, but we can ask questions.
Well, look at what happened with chemtrails, right? I just ran into Kristen Megan this weekend. I was up in D.C. and I hadn't seen her in a long time. She's now doing health freedom stuff. But the thing that she was really into in 2012 was talking about the chemtrails. She was whistleblowing about that. And I would tell people about it. They'd say, okay, you're crazy. And now all of a sudden, it's like everybody's admitting the chemtrails happen. In a way, like, chemtrails were always real. What do you mean? This is for our benefit. And there was just no point where people were saying, hey, wait a second, those guys were right. You're sketchy. Cut it out. They're just shoving it through, and everybody's supposed to be happy about it because we have to save the environment.
Yeah, we had Kristen Megan on the show, not on the show, but on this YouTube channel before, and the video went viral because she's a government whistleblower that whistleblowed on this very specific issue. Do me a favor, Tatiana, text her, be like, come to Miami, and we'll get her back here on this show.
I already thought of that. I'm going to do that.
I think she's awesome. She's great. But yeah, let's talk about, we were just talking about unconventional war. Let's continue talking about the real war that's going on right now in the Middle East, as people are still kind of waiting to see what Israel's response will be. Now, yesterday, we heard responses from official kind of Israeli channels that they would be launching a strike within the next few hours, and it's going to be severe, and it's going to be very powerful. It looks like they didn't do that, and they're still kind of discussing their kind of retaliatory actions against the retaliation from the retaliation of the other retaliation that's been going on inside of the Middle East, as of course we could expect another retaliation from this attack, which the Iranians are now threatening. It looks like the Iranians kind of don't want the smoke. They launch these missiles and then automatically issued a statement saying, that's it, guys. We're not going to launch any more, but you better not retaliate. And the Israelis are like, we're going to retaliate. Now, what will they do? As, of course, there's now considerations about hitting their oil rigs, their nuclear sites, and, of course, government political offices, as well as top leadership of the Iranian government has now been put underground. There was this discussion on CNN with Wolf Blitzer that I thought was absolutely kind of crazy, and I can't believe conversations like this are being normalized. Here's the clip.
Well, do you think, Prime Minister, that an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities right now is on the table?
That's exactly what we need to do. What happened is, for the past 20 years, Iran has built a circle of fire, a ring of fire around us and across the entire Middle East. And it's zooming forward towards a nuclear weapon. So now is the moment. You know, sometimes history knocks on your door and you got to seize the moment. If we don't do it now, I don't see it ever happening. And now is the moment. I also want to explain why. Because Iran's strategy, it had two arms that were sort of defending it, or they were its insurance policy against an Israeli strike, and that's Hezbollah and Hamas. But those two arms are temporarily paralyzed. So it's like a boxer out in the ring without arms for the next few minutes. Now is the time that we can attack because Iran is fully vulnerable. It's time to hit destroy the nuclear program, and finally allow the Iranian people to rise up, the amazing Iranian people. This is the time, this would be the gift of the Israeli people, the Jewish people, to the Iranian people.
Yeah, this as Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, is also promising regime change in Iran, saying that it's going to happen quicker than a lot of people expected to happen. After that news, we saw the Ayatollah literally go underground, literally go into hiding, as of course the Mossad has a lot of different ways of going after their targets and taking them out. What do you make of these kind of comments on CNN that are, in my opinion, bombastic?
Well, I think that's Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister of Israel.
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah. That's crazy. I mean, that'd be like a former president talking about going to war. Normally, former presidents kind of shut the F up because they realize that's not their place to talk. So for him to be doing that on CIA NN doesn't exactly surprise me. And he's signaling to the American really the American political class is who that was intended to reach, that, hey, this is our plan. Are you on board? Do you have our backs? And I think that's what we witnessed there.
Yeah, they're talking about escalating for peace, essentially, which is...
that
They
always
said a
works.
gift.
Yeah.
They said it was a gift that they were giving the Iranian people.
well, yeah, they want
So
regime
sweet.
change. You were saying something, Tatiana?
No, I'm just rolling my eyes. I don't know what's wrong with everybody. Everybody's just escalating. And what I am noticing, though, is that the people don't seem to be particularly supportive. I don't know if I'm just getting a certain type of feed in my X account, but I like to look at the comments. And, you know, you'll see everybody saying, I stand with Israel blindly. And everybody underneath is destroying them. I very, very rarely see any kind of positive comments. So I don't know. I don't know how. Is there even a way to support Israel at this point?
Well, I think both are kind of
We're all being
contingencies here that
taxed
we're
to
seeing.
do it
Yeah.
against our will. So, yeah, we're all supporting Israel.
I was watching the live streams as the bombings were unfolding, and it was just nonstop. Israeli flags, Iranian flags, Israeli flags, Iranian flags. It was like a little mini kind of civil conflict within the chat room. But I think America is largely divided on this, and I think it is largely political. People on the right are usually on the side of Israel. People on the left are usually on the side of the Middle East, the Iranians, and other countries as well. But this is very inconvenient for the Democrats. This is something that is not really good for Kamala Harris. And last night at the vice presidential debate, we kind of saw them kind of skirting around these issues and not really addressing it. It was the first question, but I thought the discussion should have been far wider here, as of course this larger rhetoric of what we're seeing here is the same kind of rhetoric we always see with war. And even the Wall Street Journal has kind of reported that this is going to be a wider war. And with that, there's going to be, of course, a lot of economic consequences from this, as a lot of people are now looking at real supply disruptions with oil, with energy, which of course will increase the price of everything. You add that with the port strikers, which will also increase the price, which will also disrupt the supply chain. And I think we're headed towards a kind of perfect economic storm as the feds are doing their best in order to try to lower rates. But financially, I think we're screwed. You go to the supermarket and you're like, yeah, we're screwed. Every time you go to that cash out, every time you try to check out, like, wow. We're getting screwed. People who have their maids do their shopping for them, they don't really see it. But I think the average American does.
Well, I've seen a fair amount of speculation stating that actually Israel itself is in trouble, not because of the war, but because all of the people in the country are leaving. There's no real incentive for them to stay, and anybody who can afford to leave is leaving. Their education is suffering, their economy is suffering, and there becomes less and less of a reason for them to stay. Most of them have dual citizenship. So oddly enough, Israel could end simply by its own people leaving due to the war. And about half of the population there is not supportive of Netanyahu. So, I mean, that could be a weird way of kind of bringing some peace to the region, but seems kind of weird too. So I guess it remains to be seen. But that's the speculation on both the Zionist and non-Zionist side, according to a report I read or listened to on the way over here today.
Interesting. I find that hard to believe that certainly not all of them will leave voluntarily. So, and I think that's the same situation in Gaza. Some people would love to leave, others will never leave. And it's like, that's the loggerheads that we're in, is that both sides believe that they have land that they possess that they will not ever give up, and it's in dispute. And it's the nature. I mean, this is why property rights are such an important thing, and that they have to be kind of mutually agreed upon. And unfortunately, in this situation, there's just no agreement to be found.
Yeah, and I think if Congress was let to vote on this, I think there's a larger possibility that even they would have been like, hey, this is not the time. Like we don't want to fight this war, as we just got new reports coming in right now. As of course, I'm also looking at Twitter. I'm looking at all the breaking news as this podcast goes on live, and we got unconfirmed reports of an American base in Syria being targeted by rockets and being deliberately attacked. This is according to sources from the Middle East. That is talking about how American soldiers are potentially under attack right now as heavy explosives are going all around the base where U.S. forces are stationed near the Iraqi-Syrian border. As of course, still a lot of this remains unconfirmed, as there are a lot of missiles, a lot of Americans inside of the Middle East. I think it's estimated that there's 43,000 American soldiers inside of the Middle East right now. There's a lot of naval fleets. There's a lot of advanced military equipment also in the region. And to me, that's the conversation that we should be having here in America. What are our guys doing over there? Why are they larger targets for individuals that we keep financing from both sides of the conflict?
I think one of the things that's tough is like the fog of war of all of this, where it's like you can get all this information from the sources in the United States and be lied to about something that's happening a state over from you. So for us to believe that we're getting the real story of what's actually happening over there, when we're taking the information from a multitude of different sources that have their own opinions, it's like it really makes you wonder what is in fact the real story anyhow. And I think about it this way also is like, we know that Ukraine has a dictatorship now. There is no political party. There is nothing but state-run media. It's like, if all this bad stuff is happening in Ukraine, we wouldn't know whether it was or it wasn't anyhow. And since there's obviously a huge loyalty factor, let's say in Israel, obviously, it's like, well, there's news outlets report on things always 100% accurately, and obviously will Hamas or their associated actors give you the true story? It's like, we don't really know where it is. So your average person that's not very deep in it has a tough job to decide where they sit on any one happening.
And if you can't trust the news sources, then add on to that the other layer of confusion when it is the bot networks that bolster one side or the other, because NAFO is obviously filled with lots of paid trolls. And then you also have pro-Russian propaganda. You have pro-Palestinian or pro-Hamas propaganda. There's troll accounts that are doing that stuff too, and just kind of bombarding your accounts with responses, and obviously pro-Israel as well. So it makes it so that people can't get a sense of public sentiment, and I don't think that's an accident. I think that they are trying to manipulate us to think that one side or the other is more popular, and therefore you should be on that side. That's very effective with Democrat voters, because they always do appeal to a consensus, and they don't ever want to be excluded. They don't want to ever be going against the experts or the mainstream. So for them, that's a very powerful factor, and I think that that's who they target with it mainly.
Awesome. Steph, we have some super chats. Can you read them?
Clint's Fishy Pride Hole says, "Hola amigos, what does Clint's..."
Dude, my pride hole doesn't talk.
Are you sure? What does Clint's
That's
standards and the Fed Reserve rate have in common? Just when you think they can't get lower, they do. This is
Dude, a Fed joke.
Is this bad
and
joke
a diss.
69?
Yes. No. There's another bad joke 69
is?
on the screen. Look at the screen and look. Read here.
Bad joke 69. Clint, I can't believe you missed the Miami meetup again. Next, we will discover that your girlfriend is causing Luke all these problems. Steph and Luke, thank you for the good times and biltong. Eat biltong is a life-changing experience. Yeah.
At landofbiltong.com, promo code WRC. We give out biltong to all the people that came out to our meetup last Friday, and they really enjoyed it. And we got another one above. Keep reading it.
We got another one?
Yeah, check the chat. And go up.
Okay. Oh, yes, we have one here. Speaking of Clint's secrets, more of Clintina's wonderful singing voice. It's high-pitched because she's tucking very hard. This one is for you, Luke. Cheer up.
Femboy Slick, we love your documentary, Simita Verita work. That is
This
Can I
is gonna
watch
be
it?
this is gonna be scary.
is amazing. Here's a clip.
Oh my God.
Oh my god.
No.
Nice cans.
Escapala pipi, escapala pipi, escapala pipi, papa, pipi, 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 escapala pipi, escapala pipi, escapala pipi, papa, pipi, 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 escapala pipi, escapala pipi, escapala pipi, papa, pipi, pipi, astuta.
Femboy Slick, we love your documentary film work. It is brilliant.
What the?
It is.
What is happening?
It is magic.
Crazy.
It brings joy and
Absolutely
love
crazy.
and appreciation to everyone, and we appreciate you deep down, Femboy Slick, from the bottom of our hearts for highlighting Clint in his
And the bottom of our chest too.
in his in his fullest, most honest self.
I want to know what the guests felt about that.
Yeah,
That was dark.
They look
I feel
uncomfortable.
like Clint is just like the like victim of so many bad jokes, and I'm just wondering, how are you feeling about this?
I've adapted to it over the past year.
So you've basically been beaten into submission.
Yeah, well, I think it's funny, honestly. So
Okay.
I think that's why I deal with it well. Because
That's
as
a
long
good
as they're
thing,
funny
Clintina.
jokes, yeah, and that was funny. I mean,
you
irrefutably
like it?
funny.
Did you like
Yeah,
yourself?
I am the butt of the joke, but it's also hilarious. So what am I supposed to do about it?
You're the boob of the joke, clearly.
Plural.
As let's keep talking about boobs, and those boobs are the moderators of the CBS debate that are now given a quote brutal assessment on their biased and obnoxious performance. Now, we all watched the vice presidential debates last night. We had Roger Stone in studio. We called into the Alex Jones show. He was on our show. We were on his show. We were multi-streaming, and we kind of went into a lot of analysis, just breaking down everything that kind of happened here. Tatiana and Bobby, we haven't really talked to you about your kind of understanding of it. But one thing that was kind of clear here was that, again, CBS News, biased as all hell. And they really did try to do a number on J.D. Vance, and they're even fact-checking him today. As CBS News on their Twitter account came out and said, during the vice presidential debate, Senator J.D. Vance claimed Vice President Harris became the appointed border czar. CBS News confirmed, rates this as false. Here's why. And literally, there's a CBS News article talking about how Harris is going to lead the administration efforts to stem migration at the border. What do you call that? As Libs of TikTok highlights their own article that contradicts their own fact check. Now, I think the reason that they're fact checking is because the bosses at CBS and the all-seeing eye that they represent, literally and figuratively, are like, yo, what the hell? You guys let JD Vance win, and they were pissed off to the point where they're like, go to Twitter. Let's try to regain the narrative. Let's try to regain the conversation. Let's try to fact check this now, because you guys, they're probably pissed at those two women. Those two women probably are getting a black left eye as we're speaking right now from the elites working at the all-seeing eye company.
Yeah, or from Doug Emhoff.
Yeah.
There's reports that he beat up a ex-fling. Anyways, that's Kamala's husband.
Oh,
Well,
it took me a minute.
They obviously have to. They obviously have to do that. We know that their interests are aligned, and I think it's like, you know, obviously perception is reality. If you figured out a way to control the media and control what is a fact and what is not a fact, then it's no surprise that they're doing this, having a cleanup job the day after. But it's like if you could take a candidate that got no primary votes and put them in and say everybody likes this person, and they can go from the least popular vice president in history to somebody that's supposedly neck and neck with the one of the most popular presidents in American history. It's like, then of course they have to lie on Twitter about these fact checks, and of course they have to play this cleanup, because the average person just doesn't know any better. But I think a lot of people have made their decision at this point, and it's really just like the absolute lowest information voter that they're trying to corral right now, because they sadly may be the difference between her or Donnie getting in.
Exactly. I think they really were pissed off after last night, because they didn't want J.D. Vance to win.
Yeah.
And I think CBS News and the higher-ups there are really pissed off. Tatiana, what did you think of the debate? Since, of course, a lot of people were particularly interested in what women thought of the debate, as I think J.D. Vance had a strategy here to try to win over the women. Did he win you over, or were you already won over?
you know what? I miss them and I'm very proud. I did not waste my time. I don't care what these losers have to say. I just couldn't care less. All I see is a bunch of lies, a bunch of, platitudes and some, fancy sentences that somebody wrote for them. I just don't care. Sorry, I don't have anything else to add, but I think I made the right decision.
Yeah, I think our assessment last night was pretty correct. Looking at the kind of blowback and the media coverage that we're seeing today, I think we kind of called it out pretty well last night. What
Yeah.
did you guys think?
No, I think we said it all last night with Alex. It's like it was clearly that's the angle they were taking. Can you appeal to housewives? He did. I think that he totally countered the narrative that they had tried to paint of him, that he's like some radical religious zealot and going to have a birth registry. And he's like, yeah, no, that's true. And I think that if they watched it, it's pretty convincing.
Yeah, it was pretty clear. CBS News, was it moderating fairly? The two people that were moderating, they're not journalists.
Yeah.
They're not people who actually cared about legitimate issues. All the questions were kind of pronged in a way where they were kind of campaign issues, specifically that were very favorable towards Kamala and very not favorable towards Donald Trump. That always was kind of the jab of the question almost every single time. And there's legitimate issues that we wish we would have gone into. There should have been some legitimate discussions, but sadly, it was a larger kind of PR event that backfired because J.D. Vance did really well. A lot better than a lot of people expected him to do, because there was a lot of contention about him being the VP. People were questioning whether that was a good decision, bad decision. I didn't think it was the best decision, but now seeing the performance last night, I'm like, I understand it now a lot better than I did previously beforehand myself.
I think J.D. Vance was just the smartest person in the room far and away. And I think that was made clear and obvious to any rational person that was watching, whichever side you want to look at. And I just think it's so funny how the most obvious way to see how biased they are is just in how they word the questions alone. They'll like literally ask a question and be like, when Donald Trump said this racist thing, what did you think about it? Because you actually are also in fact a racist. It's like, that was the way that the questions were framed. And it's like, dude, how could you possibly sit there as a person that sits on either side of the aisle and think that these are unbiased journalists? And I think that J.D. Vance, just being so much better informed and such a better articulator, he just clowned them. Those supposed journalists had no business going toe to toe with him, even with scripted answers and scripted supposed fact checks.
Yeah. Walt really didn't do well. A lot of people are talking about his friends today. A lot of people are talking about the Tiananmen Square incident. A lot of people are talking about how he definitely wasn't the best pick for Kamala, that people are now kind of realizing this isn't this kind of well-polished machine that a lot of people expect it to be. We're seeing some cracks in the kind of larger veneer of the establishment, and we saw someone that was very uncomfortable and not really willing to kind of fight or back the larger policies that they stand on, because they know a lot of the policies aren't really in favor of everyone else. And they're talking a good game, because this is what politics is. But in reality, a lot of people are seeing through the propaganda in real time more than ever. Now, do you know who a real journalist is? Julian Assange, who just came out and gave testimony to governments in the European Union, coming out and saying that, quote, he is free because he pled guilty to journalism. And I definitely agree with that. The comments that he made specifically about people within the Trump administration trying to hunt him down, the comments he made specifically about members of the CIA that were trying to get his son's DNA, also were kind of very alarming. But this is one of the first times that we're actually hearing from Julian Assange, and he definitely is dropping a lot of major bombshells during his testimony at the French Parliament, which was in the Council of Europe in Strasbourg. So yeah, big statements by Julian Assange. Clint, you listened to this. What was your kind of reaction to this?
Yeah, I watched the whole thing live, actually. It was in the middle of the night, and I saw someone post that it was going live, and I was like, whoa, Julian Assange is going to talk. He hasn't been able to. First thing that was the major takeaway was a lot of people thought that he had made in the plea deal, he probably had agreed that he would never talk again, that he would never be a problem for the regime. Wrong. What he had to say was very damning for them. So it's quite clear to me that was not part of the plea deal, and he was spitting facts. Man.
Yeah, and just 12 hours ago, we got the news that the Council of European Parliamentary Assembly has voted to confirm that Julian Assange was held as a political prisoner. So, major
Where were
news.
they before? Just wondering. I actually saw his brother in DC, and so apparently Gabriel Shipton is his brother, and he's going around to all the different politicians and basically trying to get him a pardon, because I guess by him being released claiming he was guilty, it's proving that the U.S. has the right to do what they did to him to others. So, I wish them well, and I'm surprised that they're even going for it. I'm surprised he's leaving his house, but I'm happy to see that he's speaking out. And yeah, he had a lot of support of the people in the audience. So I don't know if there'll be a change there, but that's part of the story, I guess.
Well, this is an important issue because I think Biden and the Democrats and the intel agencies kind of cut a deal with him and let him loose, because this was an issue that I think was going to be important for a lot of people. This was an issue that was extremely important for me, because this wasn't just a free speech issue. This was an international issue. Assange isn't even an American citizen, and they said that his reporting, and again, some of it was sloppy. You could pinpoint things that he did incorrectly, sure, but when you look at what he kind of did, it's the same thing that whistleblowers used to do with major publications within the United States. They no longer do any of that unless it's approved whistleblowers by the government that's leaking information in order to make their political enemies look bad. That's the issue that is at hand here, because he released information that wasn't approved, that the government didn't want out there, that the government was hiding from the general public. And this is the true kind of test of journalism that clearly has been squashed and destroyed in the mainline establishment circles, and it still exists in independent media circles. But at the same time, it's also dramatically under attack, as we have seen a lot of major censorship efforts. But I'm going to play a little bit, unless you guys want to butt in and say anything based on what I was saying.
I would just say that, Julian Assange represents what I think is the greatest existential threat, even beyond war, which is the ability to speak and disseminate information, the truth about what's happening. Like, you can't know what's happening a town over from you if you can't communicate that to others. So it's like, it doesn't really matter what happens in the world if they limit the ability for us to speak and communicate to each other. And obviously they were able to do that to him internationally when he wasn't even a U.S. citizen. Like you said, it's like, that is, in fact, the greatest threat of any and all threats that exist. And the fact that he's even out is surprising. And that is sad in and of itself, that a journalist you would expect him to perish in prison, and he didn't.
Yeah, a lot of the times people were expecting him to never get out.
Yeah.
And I think that was the larger kind of plot here. I think that was the larger kind of attempt here to fully silence him to the extent of just absolutely setting up a chilling effect where a lot of people would be just absolutely terrified and afraid of doing something similar. And that's something similar was journalism, as of course this issue is a major issue, and it's incredible to see Julian Assange actually speaking out. This is what he had to say in France.
CIA Director Pompeo launched a campaign of retribution. It is now a matter of public record that under Pompeo's explicit direction, the CIA drew up plans to kidnap and to assassinate me within the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and authorized going after my European colleagues, subjecting us to theft, hacking attacks, and the planting of false information. My wife and my infant son were also targeted. A CIA asset was permanently assigned to track my wife, and instructions were given to obtain DNA from my 6-month-old son's nappy.
Wow.
Jeez.
This is the testimony of more than 30 current and former US intelligence officials speaking to the US press, which has been additionally corroborated by records seized in a prosecution brought against some of the CIA agents involved. The CIA's targeting of myself, my family, and my associates through aggressive extrajudicial and extraterritorial means provides a rare insight into how powerful intelligence organizations engage in transnational repression. Such repressions are not unique. What is unique is that we know so much about this one due to numerous whistleblowers and to judicial investigations in Spain.
And he goes on and then specifically describes wolves with red MAGA hats, specifically calling out Mike Pompeo, that were going after him and literally plotted to assassinate and take his life. That's the severity of this entire situation that I think a lot of people don't really understand. They try to take this guy out. And I think this is why the Biden administration kind of released him, because they're like, hey, he's going to come out and he's going to speak about what the Trump administration did to him, even though everything kind of happened to him under Barack Obama's administration. And if you're going to kind of pinpoint the blame at the larger kind of intel agency attack against journalism, Barack Obama is the first person you point the finger at, as of course he used specific jurisdiction and law to go after journalists for doing their job, specifically under the Espionage Act, which he ritualistically abused with his administration, setting up a chilling effect amongst the DC press corp. That's something that deserves to be addressed, and I think Biden right now, who is a part of that administration, kind of realizes, hey, we'll let this guy go. We'll get less pressure on us, but also we'll make Donald Trump look bad. But I think if Donald Trump and his administration and in his campaign is going to take anything from this, it should be, you shouldn't be getting Mike Pompeo back in your good graces. You shouldn't be bringing back John Bolton or these other kind of wolves in red MAGA hats. So I think that message is kind of backfiring on them. And largely, Julian Assange speaking out is a good thing, as I think he also pushes away a lot of bad apples from infiltrating and joining the future Trump potential administration.
This illustrates a far bigger point that all of us are very aware of, which is that the battle, so to speak, does not end on November 5th.
Yeah.
It's not about getting Trump in office, because Pompeo was Trump's guy. You have a former director of the CIA that's now saying this about Julian Assange. Did Trump say anything positive or try to help Julian Assange when he had the power? No. And you could attribute it to, yes, he had the wrong advisors, whatever, but it's like all of us are more than well aware that Trump getting in office is simply just better than the left getting in power. And there's a lot of other work to do, almost an insurmountable work to do, to right the wrongs that have happened under him as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I'm organizing the counterparty, because people keep thinking that the president's going to solve everything for them. And I just think that, after seeing so many different cycles go by, vote harder, that doesn't really work. So we've got to think of other things. And additionally, I'm also pretty disgusted. And this is why I have such mixed feelings about Trump. Why didn't he help Assange? Assange and WikiLeaks helped him get elected, and he sold him out. I don't care if he had bad advisors. Why am I, some random girl from Jersey, able to figure out that Assange doesn't belong in jail, but Daddy Trump can't figure it out? It was, he showed no loyalty at all.
Yep, that's a great point.
Well, the right move would be, if Trump gets in office, that he officially pardons Julian Assange. And I think that's what a lot of people hope he does.
It's a little late for that. I mean, I guess. Good job. I mean, the guy was rotting in jail. He missed the birth of his children.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
No, he was officially punished by the state for doing journalism.
Doing the right thing by Snowden would matter, though, because he's basically excommunicated from the West. So
Yep. That's another one that's like, you had the opportunity to do that. And that's what kind of kills me about Trump, is that I feel like a lot of people just say, you know what, he's got it. It's going to be different this time. And it's like, if you had the opportunity, if you really were in that position of power and you missed it these times, it's like, is it really that much different this time? I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't like Trump or that I think that Kamala Harris is better. And I think a lot of people kind of default that way. It's like, you say one thing about Trump and they're like, no, you're a turncoat. What do you like, Joe Biden now? And it's like, no, dude, I understand that there's a multitude of different things happening at the same time. And, two things can be true at the same time. He can be better than her. He can be generally a good thing. They could be wanting to take him down, but he could have also put a lot of people in place, like Alex Azar at the head of HHS, that were very objectively bad, that were snakes in the grass and very much swamp monsters that were supposed to be getting eliminated.
I think he changed. I think he's different than he was before.
I hope so.
Talking to some of the people in his circle, talking and seeing the people that he's surrounding himself with. I mean, I think we're also seeing a political realignment that we never really seen before. And the liberals are pretty much the Republicans of the 2000s. And now the Republicans are the old liberals that were for free speech and for
Peace.
Peace and ending wars. So we're seeing this larger transition, and we'll see. But I have a lot more hope for Donald Trump than I ever did before, to be quite frank and quite
Well,
honest.
they each
with you.
have their own war, though.
But we're going to continue to talk about that on the next platform, as we are going to be moving over towards the free speech platform, since, of course, journalism is not boosted in the algorithm on the big tech platforms connected by the intelligentsia that doesn't want you talking freely to each other. And this is why we got to talk about some of the softer issues here. And that's why on the next platform, we are going to be talking about a lot more kind of a deeper down the rabbit hole things like P. Diddy and health, which you really can't talk about essentially on YouTube in so many different ways. Before moving over, Bobby, where can people find out more information about you?
You can find me at bobbysauce.com.
Where's your event, Tatiana? When? Where? What's the website?
Thecounterparty.com, Miami Beach, October 18th to the 20th. Maybe we'll get Clint to come out. He's in the neighborhood. Maybe, Bobby's going to come. We're going to have a lot of different people. So people can get their early bird tickets now. They're going to stop being sold at the end of this week. And they can use WRC20 for all of our listeners. People who are members of Luke Uncensored, we have an even bigger discount. So make sure that you sign up for that. And then you can find out what the codes are there.
Yeah, I'll be there. Mike Benz will be there, and a bunch of other really cool people will be there as well. So that'll be really exciting. Clint Russell, Liberty Lockdown. The link is also in our description, so you can check out his channel and conveniently just click on it.
Yeah, do that. I will not be at the event because I'm actually an AI program, and I can't be seen in person because I don't exist. But Liberty Lockdown on Instagram. If you want to follow me over there, I'd appreciate it. I never plug that because I don't use it all that often, but follow me there.
Yeah,
Liberty Lockdown.
We'll bring out a hologram machine, just like they did of Tupac.
Yeah.
So hologram, Clint Russell, will be confirmed officially at Tatiana's
if
event.
me and Tupac could do a hologram like duo rap battle, be sick.
Oh, and people can find me at on Twitter at Queen Tatiana.
Steph, read off the last super chats and tell us where people can find you.
Finboy Slick saying, for the record, Clint's face improved the video, and I love you
Hell yeah,
too. You guys, the smiles make all the work worthwhile.
I'm jealous. I want videos like that of me.
Oh,
Be careful what you wish for.
oh, that's coming next. All right, everyone, you can find me
And
on...
there's more. Look, on
Where?
the screen.
Where?
On the screen. On the screen.
Richin HH?
Yes.
Richin HH says Clint has a huge personalities.
Okay.
And Free Men Die Free saying LP would nominate Clint if he looked that way 24/7.
That could be a strategy that we could be implementing here. As of course, we are also going to go to callers in about 30 minutes. We don't have a caller now. That caller could be you. If you sign up to Luke Unfiltered.com, we will be going there in about 30 minutes as we are officially leaving this platform and going to thebestpoliticalshow.com. You want to find us? Go to that URL, thebestpoliticalshow.com.